Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. What we're going to do, we're now going to go more through the technical, kind of what it is that you would be doing. We went through what the state's requiring in terms of approval. Now what I want to do is I want to walk you through the customized procedure books that we've created for you and also the absence code matrix. So one of the things that you're going to have is we gave you a 2-page handout. This is called the absence code matrices of your attendance flags. Because one of the things when you pull them up and illuminate, the same thing like within SchoolMax, they're just like really abbreviated. It would be your 3-digit code or your single-digit code. And it's just a short abbreviation, but it never really told you which ones were actually generating ADA or what the purpose of the codes were. So what we've done is we've taken the time to go in, and if it says present, that means if it's present or tardy, that means it generates ADA. If it's absent, that means there's 0 ADA that's included for that code. So this way you're aware of when I'm using the code, what's the effect on my attendance records, and how is it recorded for the student. The other is in the explanation, it's a definition, so then you have a more detailed explanation of why we're using that code and what the intent and purpose is. Also, we'll tell you which ones are going to be included on your truancy letters. Anything that's unexcused, you will see your unreconciled not, but your unexcused absences and tardies that are over 30 minutes. Those are the ones that are included on the truancy letters. So let me walk you also through your guidebooks so you kind of know how to look at that. I'm going to take it off of PowerPoint right now. And then I'm going to push this off to the side. I'll bring it down over here. And then what you'll see in the guidebook, let's walk you through it. So when you get into the first pages, this is basically page 19. So if you go to page 19, why your numbers aren't 1 through 2 is we have it into what's called the state approval document. Section 1 is going to be the attendance setup, and it's basically pages 1 through 17 or 16. That goes through all with the attendance setup of the codes. It goes through calendar setup. It goes through security setup, all the stuff that the state needs to know about from the control setup with the system. Elementary, we put you before secondary because you're important. So you are number 2. So you come in with section 2 as elementary, and it starts on page 19 is what I call a process flow. What this does is it says in here daily, weekly, and monthly from, this is more from the administration and audit. If you wanted to get a good overall view of what it is that you do daily, weekly, and monthly, that's what the process flow is. It's basically workflow. Who's doing what, what's the purpose on that. So you'll see this one here. So this is daily, and then basically every Friday printing off the attendance on weekly rosters, the steps if there's discrepancy, all the way down to every Monday, what you would be doing on changing records back on that. Then we have in here in terms of the monthly, the daily also is your absence verification on page 20, and then when we get into the monthly, you know, it's a more summary of what it is that you have to do on the monthly. We'll actually be getting you into the details. This is just the process flow. The next one is on page 22. We like to do it in different formats. I like to keep it from very summarized down to more detailed summary, all the way down to the detail. What this is a checklist. This was designed, I told you when I first started out, there was no procedures. We did this in the event that someone was sick. Someone could come in and be able to, on a daily basis, know where it was, make sure it was done, follow this, and then in the book would be able to go into the detail and find out how to actually do it and log in and actually do the functions correctly instead of haphazardly trying to figure it out and getting the records all messed up. So this is what we call, this is what you do daily, and then this is what you do weekly. So see how we kind of broke these up? These are the required things that have to be done daily. These are the required things that have to be done weekly. I'm going to walk you through the details, just showing you where the summary is. And then these are the ones still with monthly. We're going to even get into more monthly, but on just a monthly, some of the key things, troubleshooting tips. As we go through, I'll work with Kendall and Illuminate. We can expand on this. But right now, these are the ones that are known. So we can expand. The good news is it's abbreviated. There's not a big troubleshooting list so far. That's a good thing. So things that will be helpful for you, we can add it to the troubleshooting tips to make it easier for everybody as we get more involved with what are some of the things that you would like to know about on how to resolve these issues that come up infrequently, and we'll make sure we include those. This detailed one is in terms of this, oh, it's going backwards. I went backwards. So this specific one, when you get on page 24, because your monthly process is more detailed, what we've done is we've had an additional one that's just the monthly checklist. These are the reports that you do. You make sure your missing attendance report, you know, you've got those all cleared for the month, so if the auditors came in, you wouldn't have any issues with them at a later date. And you would know that as you're going through, so that should be pretty clear. Like if you had a teacher who didn't turn it in and you know you've got your backup file with the email and the absences and tardies listed, you've got an all clear on that. This is the event that they randomly pull, the auditors do, they'll pull a day, and if they see that there's teachers on that list, they're going to ask you for backup. You would just need to make sure you have your backup documents for those dates. This other would be your monthly absence reconciliation. We're going to get into that. There's also called an entry exit day exceptions report. I'm going to walk you through those as well. These are exception reports. These are things that will affect your attendance. So we want to know about those. And the nice thing is that Illuminate provides it to us in a report. And those reports, we can even go in and access the student records online on that report. So I don't have to worry about printing something off and going in and logging into the system to make the change. Class attendance summary, that one I won't get into the details. That one's just as a good to know thing. It's there as the ADA percentages, because I had one district I was working with. Their normal ADA was around 97, 98, and it was showing up on certain days like at 88, 86. So it became a nice tool to find out, well, what's going on? This is not normal. So we need to go in and find out why certain days are 86, 88, and we found out it was the way it was set up on those days that was causing the issue for them. So that was kind of good to know. So these are things we'll go over, just letting you know the checklist there. Then what we do is, starting on page 35, is what is 20? What's that, 20? 26, is that 26? So starting on page 26, so when I don't have my reading glasses on, the numbers do not look, yeah, the sixes look like 8. So on page 26, we start off with the details, and then you actually get, and you'll see how we have it set up on Illuminate. So these are the processes a little more detailed, but here's the actual how to do it in Illuminate. And you'll see what we've done is step by step. We're giving you an actual screenshot. Thing that I don't like to do is have like here in a reference, Exhibit A, Exhibit C. Then you have to go to a separate one. I want it there where I can see it. And so we've actually done it the detail. You'll see each one of these, there's a snapshot of what it looks like. So when you're going through the book, it's real clear, and we have this in what's called high quality resolution. Otherwise, it comes out real fuzzy when you're printing it. So we've got that all set up for you. So this is just walking you through that this book is set up daily, weekly, monthly. We'll follow through. We have step-by-step how to enter attendance using the class roster, how to do attendance going in by the student, doing the search button, also how to do it using the unreconciled absence. So we have all those details in here for you. And then we'll be providing you a sample of reports and what are these reports used for, so that'll give you more information about the Illuminate system as well. So that's kind of how the details follow. Let me walk you through those now. So it's customized. Again, we did each one of the school districts, each one of the sites are different. So I've walked you through that book. And so what the daily procedures are, primarily what you're going to be doing on absence, your absence reconciliation report. You're going to be running, you get into Illuminate, you're going to log in, and then when you get over to your attendance tab, so here you'll know, you're seeing up here you've got attendance, like when you get an Illuminate, you know you have your attendance. You take down on that and you come under reports and you'll see absence reconciliation. Once you click onto that, what you want to do is when you run the report, you're only going to make sure the only ones showing on that unreconciled report, which should be your A, unreconciled, your T, unreconciled tardy, The school that we used as when we were doing these samples hadn't had independent study yet. So you should also see in their independent study pending. That's still unreconciled because that means we haven't changed it to independent study incomplete or independent study complete. So this is just a heads up that we still have it outstanding. If you know that that's still fine up to that point, you're good. It's just as a good tracking tool for you. And if you want, you can run that separate, then you can, but the report allows you to do that. So your A's and your T's for your, your default absences and tardies, as well as for independent study when you get into that. So those should be the only ones that are showing up on that report. So it's a nice tool, and again, once you get into the report, it allows you to go in and actually click on the student in the report when you bring it up line, and it takes you right over to the records, and you can make the change at that point. So it's a nice tool for doing that. The other one that you have to do daily is your missing attendance report. So this is at that time, and each one of you have a different schedule as to when you'll want to run it. If you have the prep days, you'll be running it a little bit different than you do the others. So you're going to take that point in time that is accommodating your schedules. You know your teachers, you know the best time to run it. So you're going to be running that one, before your auto dialer goes out, making sure all of your teachers have logged in at that point and taken attendance. If they haven't, you want to make sure you're timely notifying them to do it. If you're not getting compliance, work with your school administrators. We communicated this morning that it's important that sites have their support and making sure teachers do log in and take attendance. Those, of course, that are down with downtime and stuff, those are the exceptions. They can email you a list or communicate to you by phone who's absent or tardy. You can record it down and say, for some reason in that section of the building, that happens with me with my Comcast. When they're working on the local neighbor's house, they take my system down with it. So I can understand where certain sections of the building don't work at certain times. It might be the outside vendor that you're using that's working on something nearby as well. So here, what you're going to be looking for, you'll run your missing attendance report. It'll default to today's date. And then what you'll do, anybody on the list, the day that we ran it, we had teachers on the list, as you can see. So we're going to notify those teachers that they haven't taken attendance when we were logged in. And then what I would do, it's because it's not all clear, before the end of the day, I would need to make sure that it's clear. If not, this is where the following day I rerun this report, but I would change the date to yesterday's date. Like today, I would be changing, I'd have to change it to Friday and make sure that for Friday that the teachers aren't on there, or they will send me an email letting me know which students were absent or tardy, then I attach it to that report. Questions on that? Any questions on that?
I don't have any teacher.
So you wouldn't need to do it. You would only need to do it if you had an exception.
Okay, and the same thing with the absence reconciliation. I usually clear it throughout the day as people call in, and then whatever's left over by the end of the day that are left absent, I print that portion out, and then if there's any calls that come in after the fact, I'll make notations, make the changes, but then the next morning is when I go through and put U's for all those people that never called in or whatever. So, but I don't, that's the only time I print it. I don't print it when it initially
the unreconciled absence report is there as a tool for you so that it's a good tool, so the state doesn't require you to keep that. The missing absence one is only if you have an exception. So if you have an exception, what you're going to have to do is print off and show the teachers, like these, the teachers' names that say, this is like, these are the teachers on Friday, today's Monday. Now I'm going to get an email from those teachers. I'm going to go in and change their records, and then I'm going to attach the email to that. So it's just for your exceptions. Yeah, the key is in the system, it will let you know they have an all clear. It's for the ones that aren't clear, that's what the auditors will be focusing on. Those are great questions. Thank you guys for asking those. Any questions on that part? Any questions on that? The other one here is, again, the state expects 100%, so that's why we have that extra step in there. Their expectation is not 99%, theirs is 100%. So that's the way that we do show compliance on that. The thing that you want is this. This is magic. This is where you don't have to print it off. No sections are missing attendance. When you get that, it should be a nice bright green, and we should have happy faces. Party time, balloons go off, all of that. No missing attendance. We like that. The other one is, again, I already went over that, the next day, if we have exceptions, this is where, again, the next day we print it off and do the backup with the emails. So we've already gone over that. So that's daily. So they reconciling the absences, clearing those, as well as making sure every single day those teachers are taking attendance. Those are the critical things that we have to do. We do more, but those are the things for state approval.
Go ahead and put it in for them because they're in the middle of instruction. But they don't email it to me. They're just telling me on the phone.
Put it in, what you'll do then is just document somewhere that that's your process that you're doing with those teachers. Yeah. These are the ones we notified them by phone and they verbally told me because sometimes the teachers, some of them aren't good with their emails either. So what you need to do is look at what works best for you. Have it as it's called CYA protection. Cover your assets. Okay. Yes, so what you want to do is you always want to have a clear audit trail that it's something that's communicating to the auditors. So it's just saying that we call the teachers and we get a verbal from them before we change it. That would be adequate. So weekly procedures, this is that absence reconciliation. You do it daily, but at the end of the week, for those that are still remaining that you haven't cleared, you can do that 72-hour rule. So if I haven't cleared it daily and it's still remaining at the end of the week, I know that district policy allows me that for any one of them that are older than 72 hours, I have the right to go in and change those to an unexcused. So basically, after I haven't done it daily, you're not required to call the parents daily. You send out your auto dialer. You've given them where they can leave it. You're not required to go morning, afternoon, just keep calling them. That's their responsibility to notify you. You is unexcused as well. Okay. So you is unexcused. If you've been doing it as an unexcused, continue using that. I know what the UEA is after 3 unexcused. Then what we do is the 4th and on, what we're doing is we're changing those to UEAs.
Is it automatically changing it in the system, or do we have to go through?
You would have to, but we might. What we can do that as an operational procedure, and that's what I'm going to work with Kendall and also with Illuminate on, so it becomes, your preference here then would be for you want to use, instead of UEA, you want to use what, the unexcused? So we'll use the U code.
I mean, there's a lot of times where, you know, you have a family that is absent, and then after the 3 times, then they're absent throughout the year. You know, it's not like consecutive, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, a month later they're absent, a month later they're absent, and then after that it's like, you know, in December they're absent, you know, 5 times already, and we're not going to remember that, oh, that's the 4th time, that's the 5th time, you know, so it would help.
Okay.
The only time that we know that is when we go to print the letters, then we got to go back through and change everything.
Oh, I see. So let me work with Illuminate on doing that, because it would be easy for a trigger to be set up where after 3 unexcused, then it automatically rolls it over, even for the tardies, 30 minutes or more, it can roll it over to a absent unexcused tardy.
Child is out, they're taking off to go somewhere on Friday and Monday they'll be out. So I put those as unexcused, as UEA, not just you.
If it's more than 3 days, then you could, because you know it's more than the 3 unexcused.
You?
You. So you would put the 3. The unexcused and the regulations for a truant, I can't classify them a truant until after the 3rd unexcused absence.
Okay, so that's for every statewide, not district. I thought it was 2 unexcused and then the 3rd day is true.
So the 3rd, under the 3rd unexcused, right. So it's because you've got 3 unexcused absences. So upon the 3rd, you're changing it.
Oh, you're changing it to the UA truant.
Yeah,
Oh, got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the first 2 wouldn't be. They would be unexcused and then, right. That's how it is.
So after the 2nd unexcused and the 3rd, they would.
The 3rd one would be unexcused, the UEA. Right, because it's the regulations after 3 unexcused full day or 3 unexcused partial days, 30 minutes or more, without a valid reason, they are now to be classified as a truant. And what this is, there's a state report. and they're tracking where you have to report the number of students marked and identified as truant. And the only way the district can do that is that they have this UEA code, so that's what that code's used for. So what we'll do is I'll put more clarification that it's U for the first 2 days, and then anything after that subsequently would be a UEA truant. And you can pull up on the students' records too. A nice thing with Illuminate, when you pull up their records, it will actually tell you the types of absences and how many they have. So that we can actually get that and know, okay, for this student it's always going to be, and you might even want to put that in your notes or something, that they are now to be a truant. The thing though is if they do Saturday makeup program, they can clear those truancies as well. So the regulations allow you to clear those. So if they're cleared through Saturday school, they may not be subject to the truancy. It may erase that off their records. That's what it's about, was to clear any unexcused truancy so they wouldn't be subject to the SAR process or prosecution because they're allowed to make it up on the weekend. Questions on this? Any specific questions on those unreconciled absences? So the exceptions reports weekly, basically, if you've been doing this on a daily basis, you know you're clear to go basically at the end of the week. So if you've got your missing attendance reports, you want to make sure you've got your backup for the ones that were the exceptions. Again, if you're doing it daily, that'll be a non-issue. The other is what's called the entry date exceptions report. When you run that one, this is important because sometimes there's a lag period between when you're enrolling the student and when they're actually scheduled. So they're going to ask, why is that student now scheduled like 2 days later when they were enrolled on this day? Why are they not assigned into a classroom? So that's exceptions that will also show up on what's called CalPADS when the when your information technology reports it. They want to know why those students, what's the lag? Why is there missing dates in there? We want to know why that student doesn't have a teacher and wasn't assigned in the classroom. So that's what those entry date and exit date. Sometimes if you put a date in there and there's an overriding date, it'll cause that exception too. So this just notifies you of it. So you can go back and do those error checks. Because the one thing that SchoolMax didn't do, it kept the enrollment and the attendance separate. And sometimes you didn't know about those exceptions until CalPADS was occurring, and then you're trying to clean all of that stuff up here by that first week here in, which was just this, this week where we're having the first week in October is what's called Census Day, and then when the state extracts that data out, they're expecting it as well. So the other one is that ADA, that what we said, that attendance summary report. That one's just to make sure your ADA percentages look normal. Again, like the one I saw, we saw 88, 84. Their normal's 97, 98. It was a red alert for us. If you ever get 110, 120%, that's not normal because you can't get more than 100%. I had a district that had that. I was like shocked. I go, something's really going on. They had students in there behind the scenes that they weren't aware of that were not over in enrollment, but they were over in the attendance data set. They were like ghost students, and they're collecting ADA. So that's why it caused the ADA to be 120% versus 100.
Are those two reports something that the attendance runs, or is it something the secretary possibly runs and looks at?
The one for this one, right, you're looking at?
The one and the bottom one.
The entry date exceptions, that can vary at site. Somebody should be reviewing it. So sometimes it might be in a different person, or it might even be an assistant principal or another staff. So find out who's doing it. The key is that we need to have these records cleared. Generally at the elementary, I found that it's usually one person does it all. It's basically you have a limited staff, so it's one person doing all of that. It's like when in the audit arena, when they come out, it's like, do you realize that it's also if a child is coming in and they've fallen on the playground, we don't say, wait a minute, I still have to finish all of my attendance. You have to stop what you're doing and get that student into the nurse. You can't just say, wait a minute, I'm not finished with this task. We've got to get over to that. So we're doing more. You have an irate parent coming in. There's all kinds of fun, challenging things. It's just not just doing it. Yeah, and it's not just like an occasional thing. It's a daily basis, especially during break, what we call recess periods. Kids come in. So, Miss Jerry Winger, they're out there doing this. All right, here we go. Okay. So the other one is print weekly verification forms. This would be Friday, or you can print it Monday morning. It's up to your schedule, but you need to be consistent with it. Print those off. So what you're going to do is you're going to locate, it's called forms. So you'll do your attendance tab, locate forms, and select monthly, weekly verification. I know we got questions about, well, the teachers are seeing monthly up there. The monthly is for the backup procedures, so that you can print off the monthly verification forms if you have. Some of the districts are still in their elementary. They're very small, especially some of the charter schools, where they still do the monthly, print it off, and have the teachers turn it in every day to them. So that's why that function's still up there for monthly. You're using online with the terminals, so yours would still be weekly. But for monthly, if we had it down or we were using it for a certain program, we need to have that option in there. Kendall just left, but I was going to ask him, I think Illuminate for specific sites can do away with the monthly, so the teachers are only seeing the weekly in their screen. Yeah, so I think work with them and they can set that default where it's only showing on the teacher side of the house, the weekly. So every either Friday afternoon or Monday morning, you're going to be printing and distributing those. I recommend having a control log. You know which ones your teachers are, just to know who turned them in, who didn't turn them in. So if you don't have them by Wednesday, make sure that you do follow up. I know during the break I had a question, what if I have a couple of teachers who don't get it into me by Thursday or Friday? You'll be fine as long as your policy is, and the majority of all your teachers are turning it in by that Tuesday afternoon, you'll be fine. If it goes over 10%, it becomes an audit exception. So we want to make sure that means if I have 100 teachers and I have on an ongoing 10 or more, that can create an audit exception for you. But they understand teachers might be sick, some things come up. So the auditors are fine as long as it's in by that Friday. A lot of them are acceptable on that. Usually it's whatever your auditors are acceptable with them. Usually the auditors are looking at it weekly. Work with your auditors. Some may prefer an order, but usually we see them weekly, and then they're in teacher order. It's just the auditors are used to pulling things by dates. So they go over to that time frame and they'll pull it out, and then if you've got them in alpha order, it's easier for them to find it. The key with the auditors, the golden rule is you want to have easy audit trail. The quicker they're in and find stuff, the quicker they leave your schools. So that is your objective with your auditors. You don't want them staying around looking into things. Sometimes they'll find things you never want them to find. So this is why you want to keep it clear, easy for them. You want real clear, quick, and easy audits.
So I run mine on Monday mornings, give it to the teachers. Now the teacher's out for 2 or 3 days. Who signs that?
They can sign it when they return.
Okay.
Yeah, they can sign it when they return. That's an exception, which is acceptable to the auditors because that teacher was out ill.
Okay.
We don't want them coming in and signing it when they're sick either.
Yeah.
No. Any other questions on that? That's good questions. The other one here is collect those forms. So collect the weekly verification forms again. This is what we recommend, doing it weekly and then filing them in there alphabetically. So it's up to your auditors, but most of the auditors, they like them weekly with alpha within that. What do you do at your sites currently? How are you filing those? Weekly?
And then monthly.
Yeah. So it's 4 weeks within that month. So it's whatever those weeks are within that attendance month, because that's the way the auditors work. It's attendance month into the detail, and within the week, then they can do the alpha within the week.
After 4 years, attendance records retained for 4 years. We've got attendance records that go way back.
There's certain ones that are called permanent records that you can't dispose of, which is the student basically the required stuff for the student information. But these attendance rosters, if you're out and you haven't had any audit exceptions, the regulations, those are called non-permanent. They allow us to destroy those after the 4 years. Oh, they're at the district office and they're doing the 4 years. So, okay, so you're doing it.
We got audited last year, we were cleared, so we get audited again pretty soon or another 4 or 5 years?
Well, what the auditors do is every 3 years they're required to rotate. So they choose, or they'll choose their favorite schools. If you've had audit exceptions, you may be chosen every year. So what they have a tendency to do is if there's specific sites that have audit issues or compliance concerns, you'll be their favorite school to be chosen annually. They do. They want to find things, so they'll make sure you're at the top of the list. Then if there's not, then what they do is they randomly select 1/3 of the schools this year, 1/3 following, and then 1/3, so that over 3 years they've audited 100% of your schools. And that's how the state works as well. When they do audits of school districts, they do one, they're required under federal regulations, 1/3 this year, within 3 years, 100%. Otherwise, they just don't have adequate staffing to do 100%. So the good news is you want to be the ones that only every 3 years gets an audit. Tell the auditors you love them and you really miss them, but at the same time, you're like, yay, I'm glad you're not here for every year. Yeah, but this is great. The district office would store those so they would know the rules. If you were audited, they know they have to add an additional 4 years. The window starts all over again if you were ever audited and it became an audit exception. This is the thing for short-term independent study. What you'll initially do, and you'll love this, so you do not have to disenroll the students from their regular classroom and enroll them over into the independent study program. They're going to remain enrolled, but what you're going to be doing is you're going to add what's called add a new attendance program set, because currently the students in the seat-based program are set up to do classroom seat-based regular attendance, so that it's showing that I'm in the regular seat-based program. The regulations say that when the student's on independent study, you must track those separate from seat-based, because they want to know the dates that they were on independent study and the ADA generated, as well as going back to course teachers, it would let us know the academic credit for that period. That's been in the regulations. So what we had Illuminate do was add a thing that's called attendance program override, so that if I'm in the seat-based program and I go out, I want you to keep me enrolled in my classroom so it doesn't mess up my gains and loss report. Otherwise, I get entries all over the place. I want that to be intact, but I need to know that the program funding category has changed, so now I can run a report just on independent study, and then that then would reconcile back to what my records are. So it creates a nice little audit trail for you. So you'll be going into you'll come into the attendance tab. Everything for you is done from the attendance tab. Once you go into the attendance tab, I wish I had this, you'll see it in there, but it'll be off to the far right. It's called is a subheader called administration. You'll go down and you'll find a thing that says student program override. Click on that, and then what you have to do, first you select the student. So search down, select your student. Then it'll come up and it'll tell you that there's no student program override. That's because there's not one that's created. You're going to create it. So what you'll do is you'll click Add Override Record. So this is when they first go out on it. So you'll select that student, you'll click it, and then what you're going to be doing is this screen shows up. So we had to gray out. And actually what my assistant's going to be doing, she's going to be giving you fictitious students like Ryan Seacrest, Tom Selleck, actors and stuff, and she's able, and I told her, I don't know if we can do this, we'll check with them, but she's found photos of them when they were in school. She's been putting them in, and I go, I don't think we want to go that way. I think you just need to do the name and keep it, like a grayed out thing, but don't go get their actual photos. We might have some infringements going on there. They're really nice looking now. They were not cute when they were kids, so I don't think they would like that. But anyway, here you're going to have the students, so you'll know that that is the student. Then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be coming down to the section. And what you're going to be doing is in the enter and leave dates, what you'll do is you'll enter the first day that this independent study student starts. So you're going to select short-term independent study. And then what you'll be doing is you're going to put in the enter date. That's according to the agreement, and then the last day that they'll be on it. Because the following day would be the time that they return to the seat base. The good news is once you set those dates, Illuminate is set up that it defaults on that end date. The following date, it will automatically revert back over to the regular seat-based program. You don't have to flag it to go back in and make that change. It automatically does it for you. Because it is, to remember to do that is not a pleasant thing. Yes?
It's gonna be gone next week, and it is unexcused. Can you mark them unexcused for that whole week?
You wouldn't do the program attendance set, but because in the school office, you could do that. You could already, it's like independent study. You wouldn't do it through the program, you would do it through the attendance record. So yeah, and I'll show you that. It'll be the same concept that I'll show you when we get into the what we call the absence record. Yeah, you can future date it. The teachers can't, but you can.
So how far in advance can we do this? Because I already have 3 going in November.
You can do it now.
Because I know school actually didn't want us to do it so early, but we can do it now.
Yeah, the reason for this one's date sensitive, so I can add it and it would come in effect the date that I have it. So you put your entry date. Parents can sign those agreements in advance once you have it. You could go ahead and do the information in advance. You can't give them the work to do in advance. I had some parents ask for that. Can we get it in advance of our trip? No.
What if you put it in that far in advance for some reason, they end up canceling the agreement? Is it a big deal?
You just go back in there and then you would just change those records.
But they
Yeah.
don't remember to do it.
Yeah.
You know, what about you? That's why I think it's better to continue to do the way we were.
Unless you put it in your calendar, check on that. But if you get some records that they're canceling it, at that point you would know you have the agreement, you should, and be able to go back in there, right? If they let you know the student's not going out on it, then you would know at that point to pull it up.
Process, though, I would go
Yeah,
through
you
the
just
same-
go back into the attendance program set, and then what you're going to do is push them back over on the seat-based program. It's just the reverse. And since attendance, Kindle, do they have where they can they, since attendance wouldn't have been taken yet, if they, let's say that we preset the dates for November for the entry and the return date, and then a week later the parent comes back in and says, oh, we're not going to do it now, we're going to be in the seat-based program. They can go back in, I don't think they can delete though, but they would just change it, right? Would just reverse it.
Been taken for that, they can delete it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
There's no
find
need to
out.
have a record of it.
Yeah, so on that one, you can actually delete it. So we'll add that. I'll add that delete in there, that delete function. That'd be rare, but we'll add it.
No, it's not rare. They've already taken,
Oh.
they've already done unreconciled independent studies, whatever it's called.
No, she's talking about putting it in independent study in
In the
November. If I
future.
put it in today, put it
Yeah,
in the
but you
system
put
today
it
for November. I
pending, you
have it.
already put pending.
Yeah. But then they decide they're not
Pretty
going,
often, yeah.
so you can go back and.
So we could just reverse it back to the seat-based, and then you would just change the codes.
I just want to make a comment. Please do not touch the enrollment, because I already have one independent study that they changed enrollment and you cannot delete it. So
Yes.
luckily, Melissa was here, so she already told me how to fix it. But I really don't encourage you, if you see the enrollment, don't touch it when it comes to independent study or home hospital. Because
Right.
it cannot be corrected.
That was why Illuminate set up the way it did, is so it didn't affect the enrollment records because they are still enrolled in your school. So as long as they're still enrolled in your school, the only thing that's changed is where they're getting their instruction. That's either on independent study or it would be on home and hospital. So once you identify the short term, what it will do is once you press the save button, what it will do is it'll come back up there, it'll say independent study, and it's going to list the entry and the leave dates. So if you're like me and you're typing and sometimes it's supposed to be like a 10 and you put it in as the first day you make a transposition on that, you will catch it. So you can go back and make that change before you actually get away from the screen. So it actually gives you a snapshot of what your entries are.
Ahead. But then when you get to that day when they're gone, will it automatically come up in attendance that they're on?
Yeah, it does. It's really nice. It does it on that actual day, and it allows you to do it for the future. So that's something that's really nice about the program. The other is what you'll be doing is there's 2 steps. One is we're changing their attendance program setting so that we can track independent studies separate. So that's what attendance program override. That's why it's called that. Then the next thing is that we have to actually change the student's attendance record to show that they're not going to be present in the classroom because the state, unfortunately, doesn't like us claiming ADA before the students completed their work. And with the negative system, it would show the present in there, plus the teacher would have the risk of marking them incorrectly. So here what you'll do is you'll take attendance by the student. You'll select that attendance period that's applicable. Like in November, I would go to November for that attendance period. And then I'd find those dates that I just entered through the program attendance set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select in the attendance, mark the attendance. I'm going to scroll down and mark that ISP, Independent Study Pending. And what that does is state that you've got them on a contract. The work hasn't been evaluated by the teacher, but we're not going to claim ADA for that. It's an absence, it's an excused absence, but we're not generating ADA for it. And then what you do is you click the save button once you enter it for all of the dates. You can do this for, like if they're out for a full semester, you could actually pre-fill it for a full semester in advance. It allows you to do that in the system. As long as the student, although it's the same date that you have in there, you don't have to do anything. The only time you would have to do it is if, one, they returned early. You would need to change it. You'll see we have a big red bar down at the bottom. In the event the student returns early or you have to extend and get a new agreement, this is what you need to do. So that it lets you know you would have to go back in and add additional dates in there with a new agreement. You can't extend your agreement. You'd have to get a new agreement and add dates to it. So after the student's work is evaluated, so the student's been out, let's say for a week, they turned in their completed assignments. The teachers do not have to evaluate it that day. They have up to, generally your policy is 5 days, 10 days to evaluate the work. Do you know what your policy is? As soon as possible. Yeah, but it should be within, basically 5 to 10 days. So it's not going to be immediately today we're going to know. It's going to be about 5 to 10 days after it's turned in that we're going to find out what the apportionment credit is. They're going to come back in and they're going to be signing a certification thing that says student was out for 10 days. Out of that 10 days, 8 days was ISC, Independent Study Complete, ADA, and 2 of those days were Independent Study Not Complete. So what you would be doing is going in and marking those students for the days awarded. Choose, if it says 8 days, choose 8 days and mark Independent Study Complete, and then the other 2 days, you switch them from ISP to ISI, Independent Study Incomplete. But if you got 100%, 10 out of 10, all the days would be Independent Study Complete.
2 days. According to, I think, policies, they will not be eligible to have any more independent studies.
At future dates.
Okay, all right.
But you would still put, that's why that ISI code's important, so that it lets you know from an administrator, they can now run a report for independent study by students and run just the independent study incomplete codes, and then they would have a listing of students who missed more, had two days or more. So at least 2 days, then they know not to offer it again. Or it's something when they come in, you guys would know too, you would be able to pull it up for those students for the ISI days. And let me tell you the ISN one. Yeah, so we're only on the simple ones right now, the Independent Study Complete, Independent Study Incomplete. Incomplete is because your policy is after 2 missed assignments, 2 missed days, they may not participate at a later day in independent study. Is that correct? Oh, 1 day. All right, okay.
100%.
Oh, yay. All right, if they're not 100%, no more independent study for them at a future date. All right, so that's good. So any ISIs, that would be the ones we know not to provide it at a later date. And again, that is in the regulations. It's permissive on the part of the district. Your guidelines are they have to have 100% complete. Failure to do so, they may not participate at a later date.
Included in some report where we don't have to keep a log.
Nope, it'll be in our report. The log we like, I'll give you one that's easy to keep in Excel. It's just good as a good tracking tool for reconciling. It's kind of like your enrollment log. We have a manual enrollment log. It's necessary in the event that there are some just anomalies that occur in the system where you have records because we get interrupted. So we want to make sure that we have a really clear audit trail for that. So I'll give you guys an Excel spreadsheet that will follow along with this, and it'll make it easy for entering into that.
And we go in, they go into independent study, we put the date from this to that, and then if they come back and everything's done, we just put a check mark. And we have 3 independent study dates, so that's all they can do through K through 12.
Okay.
So once somebody can say, no, you've had 3 already.
So it's already easy. That's really good. That's a
That's
good
a very good
audit
idea.
trail.
I think every school should, because
Well, add that to your procedures. I do too. It's more visual. Oh, here we go for ISN. ISN. So we did ISC. ISI, we know what that one is. That's for the incomplete. This is a new one. ISN is for Independent Study, No ADA. This is where the students completed it. This would be more back. You will have very rare situations at the elementary. We're going to have more, I think, maybe at the secondary level. This would be very rare that you would have this at the elementary level, and it should be the determination of the teacher. It should not be your responsibility for determining it. This is where we have the guidelines are students have to complete at least the equivalent of 240 minutes for most grade levels, except kindergarten is 180 minutes. But all the other grade levels, it's just keep it easy, are 240 minutes. If they only completed 120 minutes out of that, the regulations say, okay, for 120 minutes, and like at secondary, they could put 2 periods in that they completed it for these 2 periods, and everything else would be ISI. Well, because the system automatically defaults to 1 period of present, which the ISC would be, it would give you false ADA at the state level. So we had to create what's called Independent Study No ADA, in which they completed it, where they would have to go back in and change the ISCs to ISN. So this one I don't think you'll be using. You guys are set up to do 1 period, which is for your daily, so you're not going to have this situation. This is more applicable when we get into the secondary level, because they can have 6 periods, they could have 4 periods ISI and 2 periods ISC, and it's not meeting the state minimum day, and now we've got a compliance issue.
you don't have to rerun the teacher sign-off report. It can show independent.
That's right, you don't
study.
have to redo it, because it'll be ISP when they signed off. Yeah, you don't have to rerun it, because theirs is going to be the accurate. They're only signing on their, what you call, column. That's all they're signing off on. And for those days, they weren't in their classroom. Questions? Any questions on this one? So that's the IS. So again, this is for home and hospital. You'll see it's the same. Home and hospital is I identify the student, and I first have to change their program setting to be regular classroom-based or special day class over to home and hospital. So the same thing as independent study. I go over, I'm not disenrolling or re-enrolling them. All I'm doing is changing their program override. They're still enrolled in the classroom, but what I'm doing is I'm using this program override. So add it. And this specific one, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be changing home and hospital. And as you see here, entry date and leave date, you'll put that. During that time frame, it will show the student out. So this was, oh, you wanted to know who we selected, huh? Our test district. We actually got into live data because when we were trying it in the test environment, it'd have to be synced every night, and we would get anomalies. It's just because it was test environment versus real. So we have read, print only, so we were able to actually go in and get actual data. So maybe we should have put down Ryan Seacrest's school, right? So we have one of the schools in there. So this is the actual live stuff in your system. So this shows September 17th through the 24th, home and hospital. We didn't save this data. We would just take a snapshot and then get out before we saved it. So this is kind of nice. You can see where you change you put the dates, and then you put your program set that you're doing, and then there's a save button that you'll press. It'll come back and it'll show you what you actually saved, and then you can go back into the attendance record, and then what you're going to do is that same student, it'll still show up there in your attendance screen. You scroll down to the dates, you choose the attendance period to those dates. You're going to change it from your default present over to, in this case, an H, which means they're on hospital but no ADA. And then once the home and hospital teacher gives you the attendance roster and they tell you the number of hours, the rules are 1 hour per ADA, not to exceed for that week, how many days were actually in operation. So if they signed 5 hours, but school was only in session this week for 3 days, I could only claim 3 days. So it's just basically no more than what's in that attendance week. And then you're going to change those to HC, home hospital credit, which means it's now apportionment credit. And this is the same as independent study. At the end of that, like here, where we had the end date, the following date, next school day, it will automatically default back to the seat-based program. So that's nice where you don't have to set up morning things to yourself to go back and change and enroll the student back into the regular classroom setting. So it'll automatically do that. Exceptions are if they return early or the period is extended, I'm going to have to go back in and make that change at that point. Questions? Any questions on those? Any questions on that? So monthly, in terms of the monthly attendance procedures, what we have here is this would be in the event that we have what we call a power outage. What you would want to do is print what's called monthly attendance rosters. And generally you can save those. Kendall, where do you guys recommend that they save for backup procedures, those PDFs of their monthlies? In the event that they have a power outage, fires, I have districts that have fires out in Southern California.
So it really depends on how your district's set up, because those are downloaded into PDF. It is one of those things where your district can store them on a server, can store them on like an Amazon source file, like on the cloud, something like that. But you want to make sure, A, they're very secure, right? You want to make sure you have a copy of them. So one of the districts I work with actually prints off a copy, then emails a copy to their superintendent. So, or a superintendent office. So the superintendent's team.
That's a small school district.
Yeah.
I can tell you the larger ones, the superintendent will be like,
It's actually 11,000 student district, so it's on the smaller side, especially compared to you guys. But they've been doing that for 20 years, of doing a process of handing it to the superintendent's office just in case anything happens. You guys probably already have a plan for that. So, or if not, we can talk to Raul and see what they would like you guys to do. But the big thing is to make sure you've got it
A
saved
backup.
in multiple places.
yeah,
In
it's
case
just,
there's a fire, in case there's a virus, just in case.
yeah, it's just in case. There's just, it's as a backup, it's your most current, and then what you would do is you would toss out or destroy the prior month with the new month. So it's only for a current month. You're not required to keep the old sets. This is only so that each month, if there was a change with your student records, you would have the most current one for that current attendance month. So it's just as a backup procedure is what that is. A lot of districts, like Kendall said, what they do is they do store them off to another server that is accessible if your Illuminate network's down or that communication network's down, so that you would be able to off-site. And like at our office, we used to have it at the office where we could print it from another printer here, and then we would get out and make sure those was distributed out to our schools. Yours are very large, so you would have to have multiple runners going out and delivering those. So we'll work with the district office in a backup procedure. This is just as a backup in the event of an emergency. You have to have some way for the teachers to take attendance if the online system's not available. The certain little blips where it's like an hour or two, they can log in afterwards and do their updates. This is where we've had fires, we've had floods, we've had other things where certain schools are down, and we've got to have backup procedures in place because students are at other campuses. Other ones is print your monthly reports. Basically what these are, the first one you're going to do is you're going to do your gains and loss report. And just look at the totals. Don't print it off. Look at your totals. So, you know, get a copy of this. This is your gains and losses reports. That's the same as your enrollment. So all you're doing is making sure the number of students that are in the system are what we have. The other one's your cumulative attendance report. That one's your detail. And then the other one's the ADA report. You'll see enrollment figures. You want to make sure all three of those, the enrollment's the same as what's called your manual. You guys are keeping manual enrollment logs, or somebody in your site is, right? So that you have the... Everybody's quiet. So what you have is basically, it's called a manual enrollment log. It's starting with month 1. You'll have your ending enrollment with month 1, and then starting with month 2, the ending enrollment becomes the beginning enrollment. Then with your exits and entries, not out of programs. It's just strictly if they enter or leave your school, You'll have a log of that, and at the end of the month, you'll have in there what your total enrollment count is. So like if you started with 800 students and your ending enrollment 798, you had a loss of 2 students. So that would agree. That would be also in your cumulative, and you run these on the same day at the same time, because as you know, if I run one today and try to do it 2 days later, it will not reconcile. It's like your bank accounts. It's fluid, it changes, so you will run these the same date, and you're just looking at totals, making sure the enrollment counts, the beginning enrollment and the ending enrollment are in agreement. We've had discrepancies. Fortunately, it's not been with Illuminate, but other systems we have. Again, I told you 120% ADA, and it had to do with enrollment counts were fine. It was the ADA, and when we went in behind the scenes, we found those additional attendance records for what we call ghost students in there.
That's the principal report that we
Yeah.
that shows the
So, Rosanna, who does the enrollment reconciliation?
That's the principal's report,
Yeah.
which is it's supposed to be run once a month,
Okay.
Usually a week after
The close?
because to get all the data
And then
the
reconcile?
changes. And like you said, it has the in and out, the ADA, the percentage of attendance, and the principal is supposed to sign, and that's supposed to be, and the editors will look at it when they come over.
Okay, yeah, they do. It's
It's
part of
supposed to be
So it's the same thing, but you guys are just calling it the principal's report. So we can go in, instead of calling it the enrollment reconciliation form, we will call it the principal's report. ADA report.
That's not the report you just had us email you, right?
No, it was 3 different ones, and she already covered all of them, which is the entry section report, the one that is similar to SY 211, where it gives you the figure of how many STC students, how many regular, and the ADA report, which is the principal's report.
And that's what the attendance clerk runs, or?
It varies, sometimes the secretary, sometimes the attendance clerk, but as long as it gets run, it has to be run. Otherwise, when I come and out at the school before the editors come over, you will have to run it. for the
Shared
whole year.
responsibility is doing it.
I'm a long-term sub, so.
Okay, all right.
So I'm like, okay, who does what here?
No,
Okay.
it varies from school site to school
Okay,
site.
I'll find out.
So we'll find out who does that, but it's important. The reason is we've got to make sure the number of students is agreeing with what we're reporting into the attendance system. So here, what you do in your print, whoever will be doing it, it'll be the attendance person or the attendance secretary. We don't know. Somebody's going to be doing this. We'll find who that designated person is. But basically, when you do the gains and loss reports, it's not an ADA report. So it won't be under attendance. It's going to be under the student tab because it has to do with student enrollment, student information. So the gains and loss report's actually going to be over under the student tab. So you go under students, you locate reports, and then you're going to see students, because this is the one you're used to, attendance, students, and it's over on the far right, and it's gains and loss. And then what you do is it's the end of day enrollment count. It should match that manual enrollment entry exit log. We'll figure out what you actually call it, and we'll call that in there as well. Yeah, so what we'll do,
Or which one is the one, SY 211, or principal's report, we just have to get used to the terminology. It has changed.
all right, we could do like a crosswalk. This was the old report, here's the new report, and we could do that. We'll do a crosswalk for you. Yeah, that'd make it easier, okay. I'm used to this, what's the new name? But the nice thing is we've documented it so that you would know, okay, this is for gains loss, entry date, exit date. This is where we would run that report, and there's how to get to it. Because that was one of the challenges when I work with multiple attendants. They're all over, they're all different, which they would be. It's proprietary, so it's just trying to find the roadmap of how to get there to those reports. And the nice thing is this one's very logical. Anything to do with enrollments over in the
This
students
is
tab.
not in our book. Is this all?
Yeah, that's in the book as well. Yep, it's in the details. So when you get into the monthly one, you'll see how to run the gains and loss report, and we actually walk you through each step. So if you follow that, it will walk you, and you'll see the screenshots, everything. Yeah, we did that so that all the things that are required for state approval, we've got it in that detailed procedures. We could even bring the state here, and the state would be able to do it. That was our intent, so that they would get a clear picture of what it is. So the other then is the new one for your detailed attendance report. What was it called in School Max? The detailed, this is by where it lists by student and it lists for the attendance month.
When it has every single student?
Yeah.
Yes, but that one, they really didn't.
Well, this one, all you would need to do is just print the totals. Look at the totals. And then if you needed to, then you could go to the detail. So the only thing that you're going to be reviewing on this is the totals, the making sure the totals will agree with the enrollment counts as well as with your ADA summary report. In the event that you've got issues, it's just looking at the totals, not printing it off. So it's called a detailed attendance report. What it's going to be is by student, and it's going to be for the attendance month. And what it's going to do is by student, it's going to give you down at the bottom, and I'll show you in a minute how you would match these up. But your gains and loss, just the enrollment counts. So if I have 800 students at the beginning and my ending enrollment 798, that's what I should have on this cumulative attendance report as well. Also the ADA report. So the ADA report is going to be what's called your monthly summary report with the ADA percentage. This is the one that summarizes it by school, by program. What you're going to be looking at is they have different ones. This was the totals off of the detailed report, the cumulative one. It's called absences. But on this report, it's called ABS. So when we get into that, it's this column. So I did like a crosswalk for you. So this is the cumulative one. This one is the ADA summary. And they must match. If they don't, run them on the same day. Again, if you run them on different dates, like if someone goes in and changes the independent study, it's going to make it change. So you want to make sure you run it, you know, and all you're going to be doing is when you run that cumulative report, go to the last page. You'll have your ADA summary report. Go to the last page and make sure that the totals are in agreement. If they are, you know you've got those two reconciled.
For last Friday. So I put in OSS, but how do I put it into his, do I go to the, like you do for the independent study?
It'll be actually in the attendance code, off school, because it's off campus suspension, off school suspension. And they're going to be for 5 days. Just 1 day. It's just going to be on the attendance code, so it would pick it up. Yeah, so the attendance code will do it. The OSS code will show that they're on suspended. Yeah, the type is suspended.
Now we don't have to put in what they're suspended for?
Yeah.
You will have that in the discipline, right, Kendall, in the discipline records for suspensions. We mark that in the student discipline records because it's confidential. The attendance code just lets us control where the student is for apportionment purposes. Off campus, no, but on campus you do. If the student was in attendance for any fraction of the day, currently the old rules were that the student had to be suspended after minimum day criteria was met, but the state hasn't audited that in the last 10 years. They haven't been modifying it, so a lot of the districts, as long as they had any fraction of attendance, they were claiming it. But the rules are for when you, as the district, suspend the student off. Now, if the student misses any day, and that is voluntary where the student made that choice. But when the district makes the choice to restrict the student from attending school, the state said we want to make sure that for you to claim ADA for the day that they were there at least for 240 minutes. So if you suspended them before that, you shouldn't be counting ADA. But some of the districts, again, were going in and not doing that until the following day with the OSS code. But it's keep your policies that you have. You use
Suspension if they're sent home like a half a day.
You can do that.
if they were 240 minutes, if they were met for 240 minutes, they've already met the state compulsory ed in terms of apportionment. Yeah, if they're suspended, let's say they were there for 4 hours and then they were suspended off, you could claim the ADA for the day. Because they were there, they attended the 240 minutes.
Right, because sometimes a principal will not do a suspension, but call mom and saying, guess what, Johnny's having a bad day, he needs to go home. So that you wouldn't enter that discipline action, and you still get the ADA.
That's
That
right.
could be a minor thingy.
And you
might
know
have
that
extended.
they've actually come down and there's more restrictions on suspending students off campus because they had in their willful defiance where it was pretty much zero tolerance, and now that has come back in a whole new mandate that's come back in where you can't do it unless it's this, this, and this. A lot more restrictive and having, because a lot of students are just missing way too many days of school because of off-campus suspensions. Any questions on this? So at least what I've done is kind of walk through in terms of here. Like this is the cumulative attendance, which is the detail. We don't have to print it off and keep the big report because the auditors can subsequently go back and print this. This is just for reconciling purposes. We're just looking at the totals. This is your daily ADA report. What this one is the ADA summary report. What did you call it in School Max for that monthly ADA summary report? No, this one would be, it's where it's the actual attendance ran out of your prior School Max system, out of Illuminate. It's actually called your daily ADA report. Because what it does is for attendance month 1, it's going to give you your totals for attendance month 1. Well, actually, here we go. Go back here, it looks like this. It's got your enrollment, and then it's going to have in here your number of absences, and then it'll have your ADA percentage.
For me to run it was the Cautivo too.
All right.
I just said it for my purposes, for ADA.
Yeah, and this one is by attendance month. So this will be month 1, and it's your summary. But you can see it's got the enrollments, the beginning and ending enrollments. It's got down here all the attendance details. But it's just summarized between excused and unexcused. It's not going to be all the absence codes. Otherwise, the report would be a wraparound report and very difficult.
And I just wanted to add, this is the time when I do my reporting periods, P1, P2. That's why we lack the system. Because I want to make sure nobody's entering anything, and I have to match those numbers. And that's why in the past we have done 2 reports, monthly and cumulative for 7 months, and those numbers have to match. And if they don't match, I have to prove why. I have to find out the reason why. And that's the reason why behind it, that's why we lack the attendance. That way nobody goes in when I'm running the reports. Just I can give a better data.
Yes.
So there's a lot of information. So the 3 reports we need to run are the gains and losses, the cumulative, and the ADA.
Yes.
Okay, so there's 3 reports that you run at the end.
At the month, right. And then what you're going to be doing is making sure on the gains and losses, it's just the enrollment count. Yeah, so those enrollment counts and stuff are going to match here. So the beginning and the ending enrollments would then match.
This one is
Yeah,
a long
the
report.
summary one you're going to be printing, right, because they send that to you. The other one, the cumulative ADA report, you're not required to print that, but you need to make sure the totals page agrees with it.
I think we're going to do like this, that way we can say this was the report before, this is the one now.
Yeah.
Right.
That way there's a little more understanding and
Okay.
what to
All right.
say, what to do.
All right. But you see the reason behind the reports, the gains and losses, to make sure the enrollment count agrees with the detail as well as the summary. And then I've got to make sure my detail and my summary are in agreement, because they can be different because it depends on, that's why if you clear your entry date exception reports, a lot of it has to do with that. Get those cleared. Your unreconciled absences, getting those cleared, those things will help you making sure these reports are clean and easy.
So she's going to tell us exactly what every month needs to be printed then.
Yeah,
As
and
far
I
as
have it
our
on the
audit
checklist, so you want, right. So review that, and then we can modify these, but review that's where we, right now, we have the checklist, and what we were doing was recommending that the checklist be turned in with the monthly reports, right?
And here we have to go over and finalize that.
Okay, all right.
So for this attendance period, which is coming up due, I think, right? It's
It was
the
due
end-
yesterday, though.
Was it?
No, I'm just joking. That's what the comment thing is. That was due yesterday.
The second portion portion of that, then we'll know, because I have not looked at any of this, I'll go back and look at that, but nothing's gonna really need to be done until we get more information on the checklist and all that for this upcoming attendance.
That's why when I sent the memo, instead of asking for the gain and losses, I asked for, I think it was the attendance program, because I wanted to
Yeah,
get
the one with the
numbers.
STC classes
Exactly.
and all that stuff, okay.
Because that one was the prior SY to 11.
Okay.
So that's the reason why I asked for that one.
Okay.
Then when I asked for the error report, the entry accession report is the one similar to the error report. And then the principal's report, which is the ADA monthly report.
And you asked for that last month?
Yeah, I sent a memo.
Maybe the
Not unless
secretary
you
did it.
didn't get it under your name because you're a sub, I don't know.
Probably
Oh,
not,
that's
probably maybe
good.
one of the Lisa's. Okay.
She's hiding it.
No, that's okay.
But that's okay to us, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and what this is also as part of the state required approval process, is they want to make sure that there is, enrollment reconciliation going on. They want to make sure the detail matches with the ADA summary, and that there's procedures in place for the oversight of that as well. So that's what these three specific reports are. So this was that ADA report, we talked about that. Any other ones, so that's daily, weekly, monthly. And as you can see, the procedures, it's not like 5 inches thick, so it's not too bad. You know, what's in here, and it's very detailed. Again, we got the checklist to kind of help through that as well. What I want to do over on this one is just take a few minutes to go through some of the basics. These are just the rules and the regulations. What we focused on was the procedures that were specific with Illuminate, ones that we are submitting up for state approval. So again, this will be in here. Maybe I'll take the school's name off. We'll leave it though. So we have it in here with the details. When I submit it to the state, I actually show them names of the actual students so they know it's not fictitious data that we've taken from another client. They know the actual dates, but in yours, for confidentiality, we change all the student data. We don't capture and keep any of it. It's just a screenshot. We make sure there's no confidential student information. So we have to go back in and put in fictitious names and student numbers so nobody would know which student that was. What I want to do is go over some of the attendance basics. Why we took attendance, we really focused on this morning. It's not, everybody believes it's all about state funding. Well, that is what pays for classrooms and all of our expenditures and our salaries. But why we take attendance is one is student success. If students are not in class, they're not learning, and very clearly they fall behind, and then we have more issues with higher issues in our law enforcement. One of the things we really need to think about is student safety. We are responsible for those children while they're here under our oversight and care. And again, I shared with you the abduction that occurred, so we are into student safety. The other one is compliance, which is compulsory attendance law. Very clearly it says the parents are required to compel their child to attend every single school day, which means every day, every minute that school's in session, unless they have a valid reason. And then those parents are required within the same day, at the latest the following. So with the district 72-hour policy, we can change those to unexcused in accordance with the truancy law policy. Money, the state says we won't fund you just on enrollment. We want to make sure that there's been someone warm chair to the, warming the seats, that there's been a physical present before we will provide you ADA. So ADA is the average daily attendance. They don't fund us on enrollment. It's basically on how many students showed up for the day and whether you get funded for those students or not. So money is it, and for us it's about 80 to 85% of our total revenues are based on attendance. The other one here is the compulsory ed law is age 6 till they turn 18. Very good questions this morning about the kindergarten students we had from one of the school administrators. If you have a kindergarten student, preschool students, they are still subject to local policy, which once you're enrolled in the school, you adhere to our policy that apply whether compulsory ed exists or not. So you're subject to the same. It's just that I can't take you up to the court and prosecute you, but you don't have to communicate that. You just can't, because the judge, unless they turn age 6, they're not subject to the truancy law. The other one here too is for attendance. This is their minimum day. That is for regular day. You have what's called absolute minimum. This might be for professional development or assembly days. For kindergarten, it can go down to 60 minutes. For grades 1 through 3, it can go to 170 minutes, and for grades 4 through 12, it can be 180 minutes. But they have what's called an averaging. We won't get into all that. For you, keep it easy, regular day. Most of our schools, 240 except kindergarten, 180. I just kept it simple. The other one here is compulsory ed. For compulsory ed law, the law says they must attend every single day, every minute. The law allows up to 30 minutes without a valid reason before they are subject to it. So 30 minutes or more without it, then they become subject to the truancy law. So here, I could come in and I could, for state funding, get full apportionment. But if it was 30 minutes or more without a valid excuse, I would still be subject to the truancy law. So that's the difference between the law and money. The truancy law is actually more restrictive than the ADA funding. They only allow a 30-minute window without a valid reason before they become subject to it. Whereas state funding, as long as the student, except for short-term independent study, non-classroom based, we're only talking about state-based programs, as long as that student physically made it to school, school has started. So the key is, did school start? Like if school starts at 8 and they go home at 7:45, you cannot claim apportionment for that. It has to be school has to start. And then any fractional physical attendance qualifies for it as long as they're under a properly credentialed employee, which could be the principal with a valid teaching credential or an assistant principal with a teaching credential as well. The other one here is in the negative attendance. This is why all of this stuff with independent study, we have to go in and change the codes to ISP. Home and hospital, we have to change it to an H. It's because in the negative attendance system, all students are deemed present until the teacher marks them absent. So that's why it came out to be the word negative. It meant we start with 100%, and then only the absences are deducted or negative on that. So it reduces it down from 100% to like your 97.2, 90.7.4 that you have. For the hourly programs, it's the opposite. This is more for, like you used to have your before school, after school, where you had supplemental hourly programs. They required you to, for each clock hour, I had to mark the student present before I could claim the apportionment. So that's rare. You don't have those at the elementary school. It's more your continuation school, those type of programs. The other one here is, this is again where the parents are required by law to notify you when their child is called, and the regulations compel their child to attend every single day, every school year. The other one is we're required, this is why we have the auto dialers, this is why we keep the notes on what it is. I like to just call it CYA, and we know what that means. This is just to make sure in the event, like this one school district where they did subpoena the records and stuff, they come in, and we've had to do that. I had to do that at one of my high schools, where we had to come back in and pull the records to show that we did our due diligence in a questionable case. The other one here is attendance staff. You're separate from the teacher. That's why you're seeing an Illuminate. You're seeing the teacher's side of attendance, and then you see your side of attendance. That's what's called the control process. They are separate so that I can track and show which information the attendance staff is doing. You would go in and subsequently verify the teacher that makes some unreconciled absence, unreconciled tardy. You will change that over to either an excuse code or an absence based on that matrix that we provided. So again, it's just to verify they're meeting compulsory ed as well as your state apportionment attendance. Now, verifying absences, only designated employees may verify the reason. The reason is that is confidential information. Be very careful about having confidential student information available on the counters where someone can see that. Because in some of my high schools, they were actually, when we were doing audits, having some of the students file absence notes and take absence calls. They are not a designated employee, and you know that they share certain information with other students. So you do not want to put yourselves in that situation. So no students, no volunteers, only the designated employees, because this is confidential information. The other one here is the method. This is why we can ask after 3, I think you guys said either 3 or 5 days for excessive absences. where you may ask for additional evidence. The regulation says that any reasonable method to determine the actual facts related to that. If I believe the parent, I don't have to ask for more. It's when it becomes questionable. The law gives you, because the law gives you that authority, you can ask for additional verification on that. So any reasonable method, and again, either a doctor's statement that they were actually, they're going to be out, but not the reasons for the absence, or a health evaluation by the district nurse or other assigned person to make that evaluation. The other here is, we've already gone over it, parents are required to notify you same day, latest the following day. This is why we have that 72-hour, 3 consecutive school day rule that's in place. The other one is legally excused. This is basically in the regulations. We have that information for you on the absence code list. If a child is out for any of the reasons authorized in law, that is called a legally excused absence. They're not subject to the truancy law. So it's really defined in here upon written request and prior approval. This would be for justifiable reasons. So this would be things they know about in advance, like court dates, court appearances. The court just doesn't say, hey, we want you to show up today. They notify you in advance. Well, they're required by law, like you are with your employer. If you're not going to be at work and you know about it in advance, you are required to provide them notification. So those same rules apply with parents. The other one is, these are the codes. So we know jury duty, we've got different ones in there for you. We have personal justifiable reasons. Again, this would be like court hearings, those types of situations. Funeral appearance, funeral, that is more under the excused absences, the old Ed Code 48205. Entertainment industry, do you guys ever have that? So entertainment industry, again, if they're going to be out for 5 or more consecutive days, you can even do that through short-term independent study. Where through the studio teacher, they work in collaboration with the classroom teacher, and you can do it through independent study. The other one here is the regulations are, and this is why you'll track it, after 5 consecutive school days, not to exceed 5 separate instances, up to 25 absences basically on that. That's what they call excused absences. Because they have a studio teacher, they're meeting their compulsory ed, so this is why they allow it. But the state came back in and said, we want to keep it at a minimum. But if you have them out on independent study, then that rule doesn't apply, because they're still getting their studies directly with your classroom teacher. The other one here too is unexcused and tardies. Again, we've kind of covered this. This is any absence where they're out for 3 full days or 3 partial days, 30 minutes or more without a valid reason. That's your U code, right? Unexcused code. Once it hits that 3rd unexcused, and at that point you start using the UEA, it's the truant code, your truant code for that. And then student enrollment, these are just some of the must-dos, just really quickly. These are things the auditors look for. One would be to protect the district. There is what's called the state required caregiver affidavit. We probably need to look at yours, but I'm sure your district is using the state required form. There's specific language in there. I'm required to have this annually, even though it's no longer a mandate. It's still there to protect the district. This is any time I have a student who resides with someone who is not their legal parent or guardian. There is no court order that places the child in it. This is where they're coming in and saying they're the grandparents, and we have the children, we're the caregiver. You would need this. This is just to protect the district, that you've enrolled the student, you're aware that this, and you provided this person, the caregiver, that these are the legal requirements for them to meet those conditions as a caregiver. You're protecting yourself. I'm enrolling the student. They're telling me that they are the caregiver. We have no knowledge of what's happened with their legal parent or guardian. We are enrolling them in here. This is to protect you. That's what this form is all about. So this is why it's the state required caregiver. It's got specific language in there to protect districts against lawsuits in the event. Well, we know we've had situations with the one child not too far from the up in one of the areas up in Northern California, where for 17 years they were abducted, and the people were bringing them in and saying they were their caregivers, and they weren't. So this protects the district against those types of situations. It's just anytime you hear you need to protect the district and have them do a caregiver. So once you become aware of it, have them sign that caregiver affidavit. It's required as annual, so they can't just do it and say this is for the next 18 years of the child while they're attending school. It's an annual one because things change. Their address may change. Their status may change as well. The other one that you need to be aware of is under the homeless children. Even though there's the McKinney-Vento, there's very limited funding for it, it is still a federal regulation. And we are still required to enroll homeless children, and we're required to do that timely. We are not required to enforce the state where we have to show evidence of their birth certificate and their immunization records if they are homeless. The federal rule says you bring them in, and your homeless liaison then works directly with the social services and other outside agencies to gather that information, but your obligation is to enroll that student. Your district does receive some Title I Part A funds, which is used to provide support over to the homeless children as well. My understanding, do you guys have a separate what's called a student residency questionnaire that's filled out for them for the homeless?
Oh, 4.
Okay, that would be the same.
Right, and I thought it was generated from the DO.
District office, and they may send it out separately a couple of times a year. If they do, then you'll be fine. The key is that somebody's doing it.
If the parent, we have 2 students who just come in the district, and the grandparents, they're staying with the grandparent, but they're not legal as yet, like if the court hasn't given them. So if we don't mark legal, the report cards and labels don't print as a contact in Illuminate. So if there's where they have to mark legal and primary and mailing, if we don't mark them legal, nothing is going to print for the child. But they're staying with the grandparents, they're just waiting for the court paperwork to...
They should fill out that caregiver affidavit in the interim.
But they're not a caregiver as yet, though.
But they're still under that. The regulations say the parent, legal guardian, or if they've completed the caregiver affidavit form. Because at that point, they are under the caregiver affidavit, they're signing that they have the students are residing with them, and they're enrolling the student and will be responsible for the child. Yeah. Legal, that, the court documents, but that's what that caregiver affidavit is. It's not an official legal document, but it's there to protect the district, letting you know, okay, they're letting us know they're residing within our district, but they're not residing with their legal parent or guardian. So in order for us to enroll it, we need a caregiver affidavit that establishes residency and gives us backup as to why that minor is living with that adult. The other one here is under the homeless children, just to let you know, it is linked to the additional funding that the state now gives you under the local control funding formula, because homeless children are automatically considered low income, and they may receive what's called the free and reduced meal program. They actually get free meals. There's also for them under the federal funding and additional support where these children can get clothes, shoes, things that they need to come to school, or transportation, additional income for housing if necessary to live in a hotel or something. But that would be through your district's homeless liaison that would coordinate that, and then they would use applicable federal and state funds to provide these for these students. Unfortunately, we've had an increase over the last few years because the economy's gone down. And homeless is not people just living on like we would normally would think on the streets. These are people who have suffered job losses. There's been the downturn in the economy, and they may have to double up. They may have to live in a shared housing with someone where they're there because they've lost their home or they can't afford to live on their own. And they are also considered temporary displacement, and they qualify under homeless because it's not their normal living conditions. The other one is, this is important, the auditors do audit this one. This is that kindergarten continuation form. So a student, if they're entering, they're going to be withheld and have to attend kindergarten for a second year. You must have the legal parent or guardian sign and date it, so it would be towards the end of the year, but before they began their second year. So like school started here this year, I would need to make sure that before they started their second year this year, that I had that form signed and dated by the legal parent or guardian. Auditors look for this because each one of them is worth about $6,000 or $7,000 because you lose a whole year of funding for that second year without it. It's a legal document. Any questions on that one? So that is a legally required form. And that is the end of this session. Do you guys have any questions on what we reviewed? Any questions at all? You're so great. Thank you so much for coming today. Thanks.